Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to show you guys how to properly set up your SPC upper control arms. So if you want your wheels perfectly centered inside of your wheel well, like the way I have it here, you'll want to do a couple of your own adjustments before you actually take it to the alignment shop. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Alright guys, we are down here in the front driver's side lower control arm, and what you want to do first is set your lower cams to maximum positive caster. And to do that, all you need to do is just rotate this. Well, first you need to loosen this bolt. It's a 22 millimeter, and then get yourself a decent 19 millimeter open end wrench, and then turn the cam so that this bolt is inward towards the passenger side. And then on the other side down here, you want to do the opposite. So you see that cam bolt is facing more towards the tire, so you want to do it that way. And then once you do that, that will basically push that lower control arm as far forward as possible. That way you can get a lot of caster. Just for reference, this is the passenger side, so just push the front lower control arm bolt further towards the inside of the car, and then the other one you want to make sure that it's towards the tire. So it's basically the opposite on the other side. But this here is a view from the front of the vehicle looking at the passenger tire. So let's say your wheel was still too far back and you wanted to push it more forward, even though you've already maxed out the caster on your lower cams. Now you can adjust this SPC upper control arm. And so SPC actually tells you to start off at letter D, which basically gives you like +2 and basically puts you back at the factory caster setting. But let's say you are still, too far back and it's hitting and you want to move it forward, then what you can do is you can change it to, let's say, letter C or letter B, and that'll give you a little bit more caster. Now if you happen to be too far forward, then you can change it to like letter E or F or G, and that'll kind of make it go negative again. And what you want to do is get it as close as possible, so that way your wheel looks pretty much centered in the wheel well. And maybe you can go a little bit more forward, kind of depends on your clearance and your preference. And then once you get that, you slide it back in and lock it in place, and then retighten this nut. This nut is a 32 millimeter, and you have to torque it down to 150 foot-pounds. So here's a close-up of the SPC upper control arms. So you can see there's like a little plate in here, maybe. Yeah, right there, right in the middle. So that controls your caster, and right now it's set to setting D, but depending on how you shift that plate, there's a little star in there. It changes your alignment. So once you have everything set up properly and you are satisfied with how it looks, what you need to do now is to make sure you check for tire clearance. And the best way to do that is to take off the shock like I've done here, and then put a jack under there and jack up the lower control arm. That way you can see where everything's going to be at full compression, as well as lock to lock when you're turning. So down here you can see I have my jack right under the lower control arm, and it's basically hooking onto one of the bolt heads down there, so that way it doesn't slip. And all you need to do is just jack it up all the way as high as you can, and my jack won't go up that high, but you want to make sure that this bump stop hits, and then that way you'll know that that's the maximum compression you're ever going to have. And you may not even hit that compression, but you never know, especially if you're off-roading a lot and you're doing some extreme stuff. But that will kind of give you an idea of where your tire is sitting. And then now what you can do is turn the steering wheel left and right, all the way lock to lock, so you can see if you have any interference. So let me show you guys that. So first I want to point out that these tires are 34-inch tires. They are 285/75 17s. They're Toyo Open Country mud terrains, so they pretty much run true to size. And I'm just test fitting it to see if it's going to fit before I actually go and buy 34s. So I wanted to give you guys that information before we start our test here. Alright, let's go ahead and turn left and see what happens. So you can see in here it's starting to hit. Maybe you can't see it, but you can hear it. And that's just hitting the plastic. And I've already done the pinch weld mod on here, so it probably would have hit that if I didn't. So that's not too bad. And then let me turn it all the way now. Okay. So that's full turn, and looks like I'm hitting something because I can't turn it in. So I'm still hitting some plastic in here, which is not terrible. We just always cut that out. And it looks like I have barely a 1/4 inch in there, so that's not good. And then I think I'm hitting the frame back here. Yep. So because of the offset of the wheels, I'm hitting the frame. And hitting the frame isn't the worst thing in the world. Hitting your fender is, because it will tear apart your fender. So that's kind of the clearance I have right now. Let's see what the front looks like. All right, let's turn the steering wheel to the right and see now. So the first thing probably I'm noticing is that the front bumper is pretty close, and it probably would hit if I was at full compression. So you can see in there, there's actually a lot of clearance. And I was worried about that canister back there, but it looks like it's even clearing that. Here's what it looks like from the bottom. So I'm not fully turned, I don't think, because I feel like something is limiting my turning right now. But this thing might hit, and what you could do is relocate this up a little bit and just bend some of these brackets. They're actually pretty easy to bend, and that'll get that out of the way. So this side doesn't seem too terrible in my opinion. It actually is pretty decent, and I think I'm gonna lock in all the settings where it's at, just because that'll give me a good starting point for my alignment. I don't want to move it any more forward because it's gonna hit my bumper, and the back pretty much already clears. It's just hitting the plastic. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten all the bolts, and we're gonna test the other side as well. All right guys, got the big old 34 back on. And one thing I forgot to mention earlier is this setup actually rubs against this upper control arm. So you're gonna have to run spacers if you're trying to run these split 6 Sequoia rims. Alright, it's in there, and yeah, it looks like it's a little bit too far forward, but it's not terrible. We can make some adjustments to fix that. But I'm going to do some turn tests and see if it's hitting anywhere. So I noticed that this thing barely clears right here. It is like millimeters from touching, which it will touch because I'm not at full compression. Let's keep going. Okay, that's the maximum turn, and it barely clears the washer fluid. Let me show you here. You can see that's the washer reservoir. It doesn't hit it, it barely clears it by like millimeters. That's pretty close. There's a little bit of flex in there, but yeah, it's not too bad. Let's go ahead and try the other way now. Hitting plastic. It's like playing The Price is Right. So it's rubbing up against the plastic here, which is not bad. So it looks like it's clearing pretty good right here. It has about a good amount of, I don't know, ½ inch. Let's go in some more. Some resistance. Must be the frame. Yep. So you can see there, it's this plastic mud thing. It's not too bad. So yeah, 34s are quite rough. And it's hitting the frame at full lock on the turn. So most likely, if you're gonna add wheel spacers, you're gonna have to do all this again. It's gonna change everything. Alright guys, got all the tires back on. Turn the steering wheel a little bit to let the suspension kind of, settle. And I'm just gonna eyeball the camber here and set it to as close as level, which is 0 degrees. That way the alignment shop can do some minor tweaks to get the camber. One thing that the alignment shop is not going to do is adjust your upper control arms, so you need to get it pretty close so that way they can just fine tune it on the bottom. So my floor is pretty level and just got it butt up against the tire, and you can see it's pretty much level right now on this side. It's actually a little bit in, which is actually what I want. You want a little bit of camber. So this side you can see here is slightly positive camber. It's sticking out a little bit on the top. So it needs to go inward a little bit, just a tiny smidge. And that should put me in spec for the camber. Now looking at it from here, you probably don't really need to mess with it because the alignment shop's going to be able to kind of tune it already. It's pretty close. So you can see this side looks pretty good. The toe is off right now, but you always adjust the toe last. Alright, we're going to just adjust the camber here. You do need to lift the vehicle, and that's probably one of the reasons why the alignment shop doesn't want to mess with it, because it is time consuming and they're not really used to adjusting it that way. So let me lift up the vehicle and then get me a 32mm, and we're going to adjust that slightly. Alright guys, one thing you want to do before you undo this top nut is to put a mark somewhere on this side here, so that way you know where it was before. So that way you know that when you slide this back, it actually moved back. There's going to be a lot of movement in the tire once you undo this, and it's going to be really hard to know. So just mark it somewhere. And so if you have positive camber, you want to push the tire inward more. Just a little bit though. Alright, so once you loosen this, you can slide this forward and back. And mine was like right there earlier, so I'm going to go like right there. You can always fine tune it some more. And SPC actually recommends you put this somewhere in the middle. I'm going to try that and see how it looks. Alright, we've got it readjusted, and we're going to check again with our level. I already eyeballed it. It looks pretty good. You probably can't see it, but it's exactly level. So this is 0 degrees of camber, which is pretty good. Now you do want a little bit, like 0.1 degrees. This is close enough that the alignment shops can actually tune it with the lower cams. So that way they don't have to adjust the upper nut anymore. So I'm pretty satisfied with that. And after you do that, you gotta torque down that top nut to 150 foot-pounds, and it takes a 32mm. You definitely want to do this because you don't want this top nut coming loose. Look at it dead on from the front, and you can see it looks pretty level. It doesn't look cocked out or anything like that. So that's good. And then now, this is up to you, and it kind of depends on if you can drive your vehicle or not. But you can start to adjust the toe out. Basically bring the tire out, because this one's kind of cocked to the right a little bit. And that'll make it nice and straight. But you really don't need to do that. The alignment shop's going to take care of that. Really, you want to make sure that the camber and the caster is correct before you take it there, and then they'll take care of the toe for you. Now if you do want to do the toe, you can just loosen the jam nut and just spin the inner tie rod, and that'll move the tire in and out. I wanted to show you guys that my camber method actually worked, and you can see on the screen here that the alignment shop, this up here is the before, and you can see the camber was at -0.1 and 0.0, which is pretty much level. And then you can see the after was exactly the same, so they actually didn't even touch my camber. And also the caster, they didn't mess with. I told them not to touch that because I already had it where I wanted it, but you can see it's actually out of spec, but that's what you want if you want to clear big tires. And then you can see my toe adjustments were pretty terrible. I was way off, and it looks like I was over half a degree off on each side, and they pushed that back into spec. So really all they had to do was really just adjust the toe. The camber and the caster have already preset for them, so I made their job pretty easy. Alright you guys, we're all done with the job, and I did actually ended up adjusting the toe at the end here. just to make it a little bit straighter. Looks like they actually maxed out my tie rod in the last time they did my alignment. So now I've got about 1/2 inch of thread showing on both sides. Should be just some minor fine tuning at the alignment shop, and that should be it for my rig. You know, I might have future plans for 34s. We'll see. Kind of haven't decided yet. Kind of don't want to deal with all the rubbing and all that stuff. But you know, let me know what you guys think down below. So if you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button down below and subscribe to my channel so you can find out if I went 34s or 33s. Have a nice day.